rear.
And so back there was the far left
Right.
of the line.
Yeah.
That was it.
That's the far left, right, yeah.
Right, that's it, yeah.
That becomes the extreme left end that Chamberlain is ordered to hold at all hazards and not surrender. This is where General Sickles should have been. If you kind of get I'll get you down here just a little bit, and if you make a fish hook out of your finger, we're now on the eye of the hook. We're looking directly up Seminary Ridge. That tall, white Taj Mahal-like structure is the Pennsylvania State Memorial. We put that up starting in 1910, completed in 1914. And we put that up because we want to be outdone by New Yorkers. We're putting some big monuments up here. If you look right behind that building, the white structure that sort of looks like a square from this angle is the dome, round building that houses the cycle round the canyon of the Battle of Gettysburg. The trees immediately behind it and to the right are referred to as Ziegler's Grove, which is where the visitor center is located. If you look right up here, you can see a blue, whitish water tower off in the trees up there. If you look at the basin to the right, you can see a lot of tombstones that are just sticking up out of the tree. That's the Evergreen Cemetery that's right across the road from us when we left the visitor center. And off here to the right, still a little bit out of view, will be Culp's Hill, which becomes the barb of the Union line of battle. So we're sitting on the end of Meade's 3.5-mile defensive position. He's got the 12th Corps on Culp's Hill. He's got the 11th Corps on Cemetery Hill. He's got Hancock's 2nd Corps right up there at the angle. He's got General Sickles extending the 3rd Corps up onto the top of this hill. And behind here in reserve will be the 5th Corps of the Union Army and the 6th Corps. And you visualize a corps is roughly a unit of about 10,000 men. In this case, some of the Union corps were a little bit bigger than that at this point. So he's got this defensive posture arrayed out here. General Sickles is now on the top of this hill, and he decides that he wants to go 3/4 of a mile out to where those cars and those monuments are located to a peach orchard. He finally starts that advance in the early afternoon, and as he starts to move his line out, he'll anchor the left down here in Devil's Den. He'll run his line right along Houck's Ridge, which is this tree line right in front of us. He'll bend it through the Rose Wheatfield, which is the open area just beyond the first tree line. His line will go up to the peach orchard, and you can actually see 2 monuments that are silhouetted against a tree that's just starting to leaf out there. He makes a right angle bend, and then he will extend his line north up the Emmitsburg Road almost as far as the Kadori Barn, the one that's right above this fellow in the olive jacket. It's got the 3 ventilators up on the top of it. 3/4 of a mile defending here, 1.5 miles out there, and on either side of the Emmitsburg Road by 4 p.m. Longstreet has 14,000 troops. If you look at that break in the tree line right there, that's where the Emmitsburg Road goes over Seminary Ridge. John Bell Hood's division is on the left side of the Emmitsburg Road. On the right side is Lafayette McLaws's Confederate division. They are now going to start that attack at 4 o'clock. 3:30 they start with artillery. At 4 o'clock Longstreet now starts to send brigade after brigade of Confederate troops. And he doesn't send everyone in one mass formation. He starts down here on the end, and he sends 1 brigade. And then he sends another brigade on their left. And then he sends another one behind them. So he's staggering in the attack, roughly forming what's called in French an en echelon attack, which means a ladder attack. He's going to move from south to north, throwing wave after wave at the Union position, expecting to hit the Union line up here. But what he's going to crash headlong into is Sickles deployed in this new line of battle out here. So the fighting starts first in Devil's Den about 4:15 or 4:20. Next wave of Confederates hit along Houck's Ridge. By 5, Confederates are entering the Wheatfield and engaging Sickles' line there. By 6, he's hitting them up in the peach orchard, and then by 7, all along the Emmitsburg Road. So what's happening is the battle is moving from our left to our right. It's bringing more and more Confederate troops into the fray. More and more weight is being brought against Sickles' line. By this point, as the fighting is starting to escalate, Meade is aware of the situation. He now begins to strip troops from the center of his line and will go as far away as Culp's Hill and start to pull the troops off of Culp's Hill, and now ferrying them down here to try and throw them in the weak spots to stop this onslaught. Even with those reinforcements, this Confederate attack will overwhelm the Union position. Ultimately, in the peach orchard, when they break the Union line out there, this entire line collapses, and all of a sudden now we've got men retreating back across these fields, trying to get back up on the Cemetery Ridge where they can regroup and reform. Confederates are going to pursue the attack. Union reinforcements coming in from the rear, the fact that the Confederates run out of daylight and momentum, and Union artillery will hastily be thrown up along this ridge line. The whole Confederate attack loses its momentum at about dusk, and the attack will be over. With that, the Confederates will have driven in Sickles' 3rd Corps. They will basically make them a non-functional unit within the Union Army at this point. They will have inflicted about 9,000 Union casualties and nearly won the Battle of Gettysburg, but could not hold that momentary breakthrough that one Georgia general claim that he made somewhere up around where that Pennsylvania Memorial is located. But he'll tell General Lee that he was there, but could not hold the position, maybe planting the idea that that's a vulnerable position for the next day. While all this fight is starting to develop in front of us, from 4 o'clock on, the chief engineer of the Union Army is sent down here to find out what the heck is going on. Meade knows something's not right down here, so he sends Gouverneur Warren down here to figure out the situation, and the monument over here honors that figure. Warren, can you imagine the expression on the chief engineer's face when he rides up here and there's no one on this hill? No one. The only people here are a bunch of signalmen behind that rock over there. Everybody else has left. Warren has a good eye for terrain as an engineer. He sees sickles deployed in this new line, and in that far tree line, he knows there are Confederate troops out there. Claims he had a shot, artillery cannon firing a shot through the trees, and when the shot goes rifling through all the branches, all of a sudden troops moved and reshuffle their position. He can see the light reflecting off of them, so he knows there are men over there. If there are men over there, somebody's going to try and take this hill. He sends his aides out to find anybody they can to get them up here. His aides bump into a brigade moving towards the battle line. That brigade is diverted, taken behind the hill, and deployed behind us. And the guy in that brigade who gets stuck on the extreme left end is an obscure colonel by the name of Joshua Chamberlain. The guys who get stuck on the other end of the line, who never get any credit, will be the 16th Michigan, and that's their monument out here, standing on the rock down over the horizon. But Vincent's brigade will defend this hill from that far corner over there.
So whenever Chamberlain orders the charge, the counterattack, which direction is it?
Well, he's going to sweep down. As we were looking up at the monument, he'll come sweeping down that hill. Oates is coming around his left, and Oates keeps trying to move behind this hill and outflank him to the right. So Oates is coming around. Chamberlain now takes his line and now stretches it and then bends it back. So the monument that we saw as we came up around is actually sitting right in that bend. So what's going to happen is Oates keeps trying to go to the left. Chamberlain keeps extending his line to his left, and so finally Oates says he makes 3 or 4 stabs. The line literally bends itself back, and then at this point, this is where Chamberlain says, "Well, with no ammunition, I order this bayonet charge." So he just assumes that something not good is happening out here, and that's one of the reasons he says he orders those bayonet charges for that reason. He doesn't know what's happening out behind him. So, and Oates says in his quote that we fought for an hour and a half. We had marched 27 miles to get onto the battlefield. They had been involved in that counter march down there. They had all kinds of problems. His men were exhausted. They didn't have any water at this point. They had fought well, but they could not take that position. And so at this point, he orders a retreat back up on the Big Round Top. And he said, as he orders the retreat, he looks up, and here comes this line of men down through the rocks. Now, Ken Burns in his series kind of described it as a classic Greek maneuver of a swinging gait, and kind of made it sound like everybody swung in a line of battle. Probably, if you listen to read the accounts that the soldiers were there, it was sort of this disorganized, spontaneous movement down the hill. And Chamberlain, it's interesting, if you read his account, as he got older, it got more embellished, which I guess we're allowed to do as we get older. But he said initially he said, I ordered a bayonet charge, but I don't think anybody heard me in the sound of the battle, and it became this spontaneous maneuver down the hill. Well, by the time he was an aging veteran, he was lecturing and telling people how this swinging line swept down the hill and gobbled up, scores of Oates' men out in front of him. And to his chagrin, Oates makes this quote about looking up after making this hour-and-a-half engagement and hurling back and making 3 attempts to dislodge Chamberlain, running out of ammunition. His men were exhausted. His brother had been mortally wounded back there, and he decides now at this point to abandon that position and fall back up onto a Big Round Top. And we looked up, and here comes this line of Union soldiers at us. And then he says, we ran like a herd of cattle. Well, in the Ken Burns series, what you find is that when Ken Burns took that, he left the whole quote out and just said, we ran like a herd of cattle, William C. Oates. Now, if you're from Alabama, you're not too happy with the way that got quoted in the history. Probably Chamberlain was with the 20th Maine coming through a farm lane back here where this bridle path is located when they were spotted by General Warren's aides and taken up here to your right to be put up on Little Round Top. They were heading out towards the Wheatfield for that fight out there.